Pablo, what's going on? Good morning, good evening.
Hi, nice to be here.
Yeah, really good to meet you. We've never talked. We are just internet friends, or we're internet me reaching out to you people, and we're becoming friends right in real time right now. That's happening.
And so far, it's working out really
It's working
nicely.
out great. We love each other. It's awesome. Yeah, dude, when I saw the Memeevil music page, I was like, I have to find this person. I have to know what's up. There's like there are I mean, are there competing? Okay, well, okay, let me let me just give a little intro for those who don't know. All
Sure.
right, Pablo Andoni Olabarría. Is it Olabarría or Olabarría?
Olabarría, yeah.
Olabarría.
And
Okay,
with a hard R also.
but
But I'll excuse that.
wait, did I say r or instead of
Yeah.
Maria? Okay, yeah. Yeah, it is an amazing composer, and who I found out about through the Memeevil music page. Memeevil music is it's gotta. I mean, if not the only, it's gotta be the biggest meme page on Instagram about early music, medieval and Renaissance music. Am I correct that it's the biggest one?
Actually, I don't really know if there are others that are doing the same. Like there's quite a large community of meme pages about classical music, new music, contemporary music, etc. But specifically about early music or even just medieval music, concretely, I don't think there is just. So my page is probably the only one. I know on Facebook, if even anyone uses Facebook anymore, I think there might be a couple others, but yeah, not on Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, because you're like, what is it, like 54, 55K followers?
Right now it's a bit over 50K or like 52K, something like that.
Yeah, wild, man. That's wild. Numbers. You're doing numbers here.
Line go up.
Yeah, I was given. I was turned on to by. Do you know Daisy Press by any chance, the vocalist?
No, I don't think I do.
She does stuff in Spain, like a fair amount, but I don't know. She's an early music practitioner, vocalist. But yeah, I know she sent me. She's been on the stream before. Yeah, and then I of course I checked out your own music. I assumed you were a composer ahead of time. I mean, I don't know what civilian would make such a page, but yeah, and I was just like not surprised to find that your music is awesome. It rips. I'm very, very excited about it.
Actually, I think it's interesting that you assume that I was a composer, because I think most people would be surprised when learning about my career path. Like, I have nothing to do like academically with early music or anything like that, and I suppose most people would assume I'm in that milieu, right?
Yeah.
So having to do like an early music singer or conductor or something like that. So yeah, it's interesting that you would assume I'm a composer or in that
I mean,
other category.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. I wouldn't have assumed that your music sounds as it does.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, we'll get into that a little bit. You know, to what extent your music and in what ways your music, it is rooted in early music, medieval music. You know, like because there are things about your music that I know. Like I can see how there's like it would be rooted in medieval music, but I think a lot of people would not. Like, you know, there's not a lot of like surface, you know, like all pair.
Yeah, the way I approach not the way I approach it, because I don't think of it as something that I approach, but probably the way in which medieval music has influenced my way of thinking or my way of composing is not superficial at all. And with that, I'm not saying that it's super deep and interesting and technical. What I mean is that if someone listens to my music, just listening to it, they would probably not guess that it has anything to do with medieval music. But then you get a bit under the skin. You try to get into how it works, or how I'm thinking about it, or how I notate it, or how it's performed. And then there are some similarities and some other things which are completely different, which
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Here, I'm going to adjust my mic a little bit. Yeah, because I want to get really deep into your music itself, because it clearly, in a little bit. First I want to like get the meme, like get the meme page things. Well, I don't want to say out of the way, but just ease into it through that, because I mean, clearly your life's work is not the meme page. Your life's work is as an artist, But
It's part of it. It's like kind of the hobby part of it.
yeah. Are you how long have you been doing it? When did you start Meme Evil music?
I started last summer, actually, so it's not even a year that I'm doing this. But before starting the page, I would just make these stupid memes and post it on my Instagram story, and like in my personal account.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I created the page mostly like a sort of archive, right? So all the things that I was posting on my story for 24 hours, and they would disappear. I was like, okay, I can put them here, and then they are there for whoever crazy person. Then it turns out it's 50K crazy people that are interested in that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
at the beginning, I was just thinking of it like a sort of archive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I like there's a bunch of you have so many followers, and I looked at how many of my followers or people I follow your page. Not a ton, actually. I mean, it's not a huge overlap. And then I checked. I was like, I don't know. I'm always interested, like who, what kind of folks, what's the audience for this meme page. And I mean, you have a lot of very straight up like classical music, and yeah, I mean, just a lot of classical, people from that world. It looks like.
Yeah, I can imagine most of the people that follow me are either from the early music scene, so people that are either doing or studying or just learning about early music. But then I imagine most of them come actually from classical music.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because even the people who do early music normally start as classical musicians and then slowly start diverting towards that. And also, like, sometimes I get comments on my memes that say like, this helped me a lot for my music history exam or something like that, right? So it's like people maybe studying piano or flute or whatever, and then they are very tangentially into early music through some course like music history or something like that.
Yeah. You 'cause you said though that your career might be surprising. Like you said, you're like earlier that you're not can't remember how you put it. You said like you're not academically involved in early music. Like you mean like you're not a scholar of early music? Is that kind of how you mean by that?
Absolutely, I'm not. But
Yeah,
even
me neither. Yeah.
I mean that even I never really formally studied anything that has to do with early music. So
Yeah.
what I studied is I started at first with piano, so that's my main instrument. And I mean, I say my main instrument as if I can play others. I can't. I'm a pianist, and I have a didgeridoo, but I wouldn't consider myself a didgeridoo player.
Dude, notation is an instrument. Just putting it out there, right? No.
Yeah, but not really. I wouldn't consider. I think that's a bit of composer cope, probably, to say that musical notation
Composer cope.
is some kind of instrument. No, but as I was saying, I started with piano, and then I studied conducting, but like classical conducting, so orchestra conducting, and composition, which I consider to be my main career thing. Right, my main work is as a composer. Um, and as a composer, as you said, my music has also not a lot to do with superficially with early music, and I don't perform early music. I don't record, or I don't write about early music. So in that sense, other than my Instagram page, I don't do anything.
Well, because the
With,
piano, I mean, the piano is not a medieval instrument. It even not so
no,
much.
not at all. No.
Not even so much of a Renaissance instrument. I mean, well, we could talk about the cutoff point too, but yeah, and also, I mean, conducting. There isn't anything to conduct early music wise because they didn't have, right. I mean, as far as I know, conducting comes when the ensembles get huge. It's like when you've got
Uh,
like, you know,
Yeah, I mean, you can see some videos of Marcel Perez with ensemble organum, or sometimes when people sing chant or something like that, there will be someone kind of conducting, but it's not really what we would think today, like in the classical sense, as conducting.
Yeah. I got to be honest, it took me years before I actually would sit down with pieces of classical music and listen to like many different performances of it. Like up until adulthood. I mean, when I was younger, I literally would just, I would just have one
You
version
would have the
of
one, then
Beethoven's Seventh, and I would be like, "That's what it sounds like." It was only later that I was like, "Oh yeah, actually, the
yeah.
conductor is in fact an artist who makes this stuff what it is." I almost thought conductors like it was a scam or something when I was young. I was like, they
I
don't
think
change it that much.
many people probably think that, and to some extent, to the extent that people that lay people know about classical music, it kind of is a scam. So if you see the New Year's concert, right, with the Vienna Philharmonic, the conductor is not doing that much, right? Those
Right.
musicians could perfectly play the Blue Danube without conductor, and it would sound basically the same. But of course, then try to imagine like a symphony by Mahler, where
Yeah.
you have 120 people on stage and crazy changes of tempo, ritardandos, and everything. But of course, most people who are not into classical music don't know about Mahler's music.
Yeah.
So they would see like the extent to which they know about orchestras and conducting is probably something like the New Year's concert.
Yeah.
And in that sense, you just see a guy moving his arms to really easy music,
Yeah.
which doesn't really change a lot in tempo or in anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can understand like people who are like, okay, but what does the conductor do? Like,
Yeah.
what is he doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, even if you see like a symphony by Mahler, as a layperson, it's almost impossible to decipher what movement of the hand or of the arm has what kind of reaction, right? So
Yeah, and I mean, I've come to learn that it's not just like a tempo and a dynamics thing. I mean, I like, I'm not trained as a classical composer like conservatory wise, but
mhm.
I have early on I was writing stuff for chamber groups. I was sort of like, oh, what if I'm going in that direction? And I did. Do you know the Ostrava New Music Days thing with the SCM,
Yeah,
Peter Kotick? Like I did that. This was like, 20 years ago. And it's like, yeah, the conductor there was like, I watched him. This was the first time I really understood a conductor. Like he was in running the rehearsals, and he was just, there's some contemporary, I can't remember what piece it was, but he was just like, yeah, like horns, duck down a little bit, play that more staccato so it like activates. It was one of these things where the percussion sound, activates some like
yeah,
long tone coming over from here. And it was just, just that one thing I was like, this person knows this piece inside and out, every 3D timbre, especially with that 20th century music stuff. It's like, it's not super obvious what is supposed to, so anyway, there's like a moment I was like, okay, it's the running the rehearsal
yeah.
too.
And with contemporary music, like if you're trying to rehearse a piece that has never been played before, you don't have a recording to go by, you have no idea how it sounds until you actually play it. Then it's basically you 100% need someone who has taken the time to study the score, take a look at it, see how it works, and then kind of like run the rehearsal, like organize the work, right?
Mhm.
You absolutely need that. That kind of figure. So
Yeah. Do you find at all like does everyone like the Meme Evil music page, or do you have like other people who like find it uh trivializing of the seriousness of of the
Uh, but probably there are people who think that, but they have never reached out to me to tell me. So as far as I know, everyone loves it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would think people need like any way to get this into the popular consciousness, right? Just anything
Yeah.
to smuggle it in to get people to like it. I mean, it's
Yeah, like and also I find and this goes for both milieus. So like for medieval music, but also for contemporary music. Uh, I find people are not so snobbish about it as maybe classical people are sometimes perceived to be, right?
Right.
So I mean, if you're making medieval music, there's already a level of absurdity to the act of making music that was made 800, 900 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think also in part that's part of the success of my page. The fact that I'm taking something that is so old and so disconnected, I'm bringing it to internet culture, if you can even call it
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So
Even just seeing the names of just Macho or something just written in the meme font. Even just that
exactly,
is
yeah.
like you're experiencing something with the meme font,
There's already a disconnection, and I think humor many times works as just connecting two ideas which have nothing to do, and then humor arises naturally from that. In that sense, just the act of making a meme about medieval music or about so composers who died 700 years ago,
Yeah,
there's something already funny enough in there. And
yeah.
then you also have many more layers. So the crazy miniatures, the crazy marginalia that these people would draw. Medieval culture is also not only like temporarily detached from how we think today, but also the fact of having like a religious motet, and on the corner of that motet you see a drawing of a dog licking his balls.
Right, right, right.
That's already funny enough, right? So
Right, right,
it's almost like you don't even have to make the meme; you just show that, and that's
right,
already funny
right, right, right.
for us. One can only speculate, I guess, how they would have thought about that, right? So they have this chant book, and they have in the margins of this chant book these crazy drawings, and how would they have perceived that? It was just like, just let the artist use those corners that are going to be
Right.
blank anyway to paint something that maybe it's like a technical study for something else,
Yeah.
or was there some kind of intention, some kind of irony in painting that sort of stuff?
Right,
So
right. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
it's
I bet some of it is some kind of psychology that we couldn't even imagine, and then I bet other parts of it are just exactly what it seems like.
yeah,
Laughing at a dog licking his balls, like just the completely contemporary. It's funny, thing of like classical music versus early music, like in medieval music, right? It's inherently funny and arcane. It's so disconnected. But like the thing is, I mean, so is like Bach actually, except just like there still is this cultural, like even now, you're still kind of like supposed to like Mozart or Bach or something. Whereas like medieval music's not supposed,
yeah.
that's not part of what you're like supposed to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
In medieval music, you're almost not even supposed to know about it.
yeah, like, it's just, like, only I mean, yeah, it's I mean, people that, "Oh, like, maybe it's, like, you're into, like, going to, like, a Renaissance fair or something, or you're, like, into Dungeons& and Dragons or something,"
But
but.
if you go into a Renaissance fair, they are mostly not going to be playing actual medieval music
No,
or
no, no.
actual Renaissance music, which is a pity because there's so much extremely good medieval music that you could play at a Renaissance fair, just like as a dance music or as background or something
Yeah,
like that,
and
and it wouldn't it wouldn't feel out of place. But for some reasons, musicians who do that kind of stuff just take the superficial aspects of how in the collective imaginary we think of medieval sounding,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
they disregard the actual melodies, the actual rhythms, the actual
Right, right. If people
pieces that
got
were composed.
serious, I mean, that could be jobs for the community, you know what I mean, right there? But, like,
Yeah, at the same time, the people who go to a Renaissance fair are also not aware of Renaissance and medieval music.
yeah,
So they probably wouldn't even notice if you're like, hey, but this melody that I'm playing was actually annotated, like written down by someone 700 years ago.
yeah, yeah.
It would be like, okay, but
But
so what?
it could be sick though if like if Ren fairs like I actually merged with like the actual highbrow scholarship of like pre-Baroque music, and there was actually some kind of like meeting point where like where you could actually go and hear like the Tallis scholars and eat one of those ridiculous mutton legs or something, like actually just the high and the low brow, watch a jousting, but then there's also like Marcel Dupré is like doing some, like
yeah, I imagine that would be nice to take medieval fairs or Renaissance fairs. I think also the concept of a Renaissance fair is more of an American thing. I feel like at least here in Spain and probably also in other countries in Europe, we do medieval fairs, so like specifically medieval, and people would go there, even people who are like who have the special interest of dressing up and like role playing like medieval characters or whatever. They care much more about the aesthetic than about the actual content. So you will go to one of these medieval fairs and they will be serving fries, right?
right, right.
Fries with maybe like mutton or something like that. So it looks medieval, but it's you're not even supposed to realize the dissonance of there being potatoes at a medieval fair, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it should
like
be
that.
like, yeah, it should be like pheasant with like orange or something like that. I don't know, like some like this is what I.
Exactly, but then not so many people would order it, and
Yeah.
you don't make so much money.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I mean, I know the answer to this roughly. Well, do I? I'd still be interested. But for the people, right? For the people, what would you? Okay, well, first of all, like medieval music is the page is we're talking about medieval music, not Renaissance music so much, but also
Not so much, yeah.
but but also the word early music. It contains both medieval and Renaissance music. If somebody like if somebody watching this is interested, like what time periods is like early music, like roughly? I mean, we're talking about European music before what?
I don't really like the term early music because it's already it has some connotations that I don't particularly enjoy. So it's like the fact of calling something early music is you're already comparing it to something else, right?
Yeah.
And also it's so okay, so just for if in case anyone who's listening doesn't really know, early music is normally used to describe music which comes before the classical canon, right? So in that sense, even early Baroque music is many times considered part of early music.
Yeah.
So sometimes even Rameau or composers like that will be considered early music. But the problem for me is that you're already making this comparison with the classical canon, so Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, etc., and saying, okay, so what came before that, right?
Yeah.
And in that, what came before, you don't make any distinction, right? So you could be singing Machaut in the same early music concert as you sing Monteverdi.
I was gonna say, yeah. I was gonna say, like, do you consider Monteverdi early music? Because that's like that's like early Baroque. It's not Bach, but it's not Renaissance music. It's birth of opera.
I consider Monteverdi early music in the sense that most people who say early music would probably consider Monteverdi early music, but I just reject the term entirely. I just don't really like it.
Yeah,
I mean, I use it in conversation. This is not like I'm dogmatically against using this term, but even already, if you take medieval music and Renaissance music, it's just so diametrically opposed already. But then if you go even more granular and look at different moments and different places in Europe, for example, for medieval music, then in medieval music, you're basically taking an antiphon that was sung in the 6th century, and you're taking I don't know, Dunstable, for example, which is already 4-part and isarrhythmic and mensural notation. So even in that sense, talking about medieval music, if you think about it as a genre, you're probably thinking of it wrong. Right?
Yeah, no, I feel that. Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking like what do you think about this thing about the classical canon? Like, I'm interested in that just as a thing because it exists. I mean, it still is. I mean, it's still viewed as an actual thing that is a valid way of looking at things. But I mean, 20th century music. When I think of the classical canon, I think of something that kind of ended in the 20th century. I mean, is that would you is that sort of like objectively agreed upon? Like,
pretty much, yeah. Like you wouldn't consider even someone like Debussy, or like I don't even want to go into Schoenberg because most people won't say Schoenberg is part of the classical canon, and even some people, which is ridiculous, would say Schoenberg is contemporary music.
Right.
It's already more than 100 years old. But yeah, I think if you talk about the classical canon, most people would say it ends with Mahler, Strauss, and then everything that comes later. And it's not chronologically later because probably Debussy or Schoenberg might not be considered part of the classical canon, but Strauss died in 1950, I think, or something like that. And these things where they say the last four songs by Strauss and structures by Boulez were written in the same year, right? 1948. So it's not even a chronological thing. It's kind of an stylistical thing.
Yeah, stylistic aesthetics. Yeah. I mean, tonality, when things become atonal, that's pretty
basically
much
like common practice. What's normally
common
called
practice is the word. Yeah.
Common practice.
Yeah.
So yeah, with the classical canon, it's something like kind of the same happens with early music. These categorizations don't really work, but they serve to refer to a kind of nebulous idea of like a mental category of what we mean. So if we say classical canon, we're immediately going to think about Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms,
I mean,
Schumann, Chopin.
I mean, I think of it as
Handel, Haydn.
It's like Enlightenment, basically, or like Enlightenment, or / maybe a little bit before Scientific Revolution. I mean, right? That's sort of the
basically
moment. Like, I mean, through 20th century, where just like it's just the end, just like reason.
Exactly, and done with reason. Up to avant-garde music or modernist music, if you want to call it like that. And I like that music, but I love that music. Like that's the kind of music that I started listening. Like as soon as I started deciding what I was listening to. So as a teenager, I was basically eating up all of Beethoven, Mozart, Bach.
Okay.
So I really began with that, and then I was like, this is really, really good. So from there I started going to the edges of this classical canon, and then from there you say like, oh, so this Rite of Spring piece, I've heard about it, but it doesn't sound to me like Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. So then you start listening to that, and the first reaction is always like, like there's something there, but it's not.
That's the best, man. That's the best. Where you're like, I mean, it's been years since I've experienced something like that. Where you're like, I don't like this, but I do like that. Like I want.
Yeah.
I dislike it, but I want to hear it again immediately. You know.
Exactly. Like it doesn't. I don't like it as a first approach, but I'm into it. Like I wanna listen to it again, find what it is, like it's got something, so you want to go again and listen to it, and then from there you go, you find more music, you end up listening to Lachenmann, Robitelli, Grisey, whatever, stuff like that. And it's really interesting to find music that challenges your own idea about what music is itself. Mm-hmm. And you can go that with more modern composers, but you can also go backwards, right? You can go like, okay, but I remember listening as a kid the phrase that Bach was the father of music.
Right.
Because inside of this classical canon, he's one of the earliest composers, right? So I remember this phrase, Bach is the father of music. And then at some point you say like, okay, but people were doing music before Bach.
Yeah, well, that's like saying, Zeus was like the guy, it's like there were guys, didn't like Kronos there was Kronos, right? I mean, these guys before Zeus, it's like, I mean, yeah.
Right. And then you listen to, I don't know, like the Messe Notre Dame de Machaut, and you kind of get the same feeling as you get with Rite of Spring. It's like, this is just so different
Well, this
from
is,
what I'm used to listening,
yeah.
but it's got something, right? It's got something that makes me want to go deeper in it, and then from there you find more and more music. And I think most of the people who get into early music and also into contemporary music kind of walk this path. So maybe getting early into classical music as a kid, just playing an instrument, and then from there you start pushing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is interesting because for me, it's like it was actually a pretty different path in the sense of, I mean, I played classical piano when I was young. I was like pretty serious, but I never was, that was never my, when I started to be like, I listened to this and that, I didn't listen to classical music at all. And then just being into the extremes of metal and punk and noise music and just, just alien, this sort of sense of extremity or something, I got from that into 20th century music, Xenakis, just the extremity and alienness of it. And then from that, I had teachers at school who were like, well, if you like this, you will also like Arvo Pärt. And I was like, okay, I kind of love this, but they were, or they were just kind of trying to hit me to like alt general, like contemporary, just, post World War II, whatever. Posers, it's not really contemporary, but 20th century and forward. And then from there, I got into early music and I kind of skipped really even being particularly into the actual canon. And then I got more and more into Bach and Beethoven and Mozart by sort of encroaching in it from both sides.
That's really, it's really fascinating because it's kind of the completely opposite approach.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in knowing like how do you skip from metal, from listening to metal to listening to Xenakis?
Oh, well, that's been the easiest transition possible. I mean, Xenakis is just, it's heavy, it's just heavy.
No. Yeah, I agree that the aesthetics can be really similar, but like, how do you find about Xenakis from listening to?
Well, that's a great question. The answer is Mr. Bungle. Are you a fan, or were you ever a fan?
I don't know who that is.
That may be a generational thing. I think you're probably quite a bit younger than I am. This was like if you were a kid in like a kid in the 90s. This was they're like, I mean, do you know Mike Patton? Like him or at all? Anyway, they're just like a very weird, just very weird kind of John Zorn-ish, but in the rock world kind of thing. And they the guitar player Trey Spruance from Mr. Bungle, he had this website called Web of Mimicry where he would just list just what he was into and just tell people about stuff, and he would just list extreme death metal stuff and noise music and electronic music, and and he was just like,
so Mr. Bungle is a band.
Oh yeah, Mr. Bungle, it was a band. Okay. Really worth checking out. Some of it a lot of it is humorous in a really juvenile way. Some of it is just absolutely profoundly deep. I mean, if you're into Zorn, like, I mean, Naked City, I mean, this sort of area of composition of like hybridity or whatever. But so for that, I mean, I got into to Xenakis and then from there, I was just like, oh, okay. So like, I didn't really consider it classical music. I mean, it was just classical instruments,
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing for me that makes common practice era music, though, I think to me, and this is maybe we can pivot to talking about your own music, possibly if, we definitely want to pivot to talking about your music. I don't know if this point that I'm going to make is a resonant thing for you or not, but for me, like what is similar to me about music before the canon and after the canon, it's not so much a sound, a thing of like actual sound, but it's like an attention, the kind of attention that it asks of a person to me is very different. Like listening to sonata form or like rondo form or like these things, you know, or like a fugue, there's a certain type of attention that it demands that to me is like has nothing to do with listening to like Feldman or Lachenmann. I mean, it's just not even the
Right.
same experience of time or following a narrative or following going from point A to point B. Feldman is an extreme example, obviously, but like, but I mean, you know, but even just, I don't know, Rebecca Saunders or something, you know, just like a 20-minute piece, but you know, and early music, uh, I'm just gonna say early music in this as this vulgar sort of,
It's
you know,
fine. It's fine. No, no.
like pre-Baroque music. It doesn't demand the same kind of attention as 20th century music, but it is equally alien to me,
Yeah.
attention span wise, than classical music. Like, do you feel that way? Like the way when you listen to like Machaut or medieval music or Renaissance, that the way your mind latches onto things or doesn't is like way different from classical music. Like, does that you
It
feel
kind of
that?
depends, because it's true that in medieval music, especially in some repertoires of medieval music, you find just a completely different temporality, a completely different sense of time when listening to it. But some others are even more superficial in the sense of time, to what you would expect in a sonata form, right? So, for example, in a sonata form, you're kind of expected to work with memory. So I mean, not maybe you're not expected to work with to actively think about memory when listening to it, but they were using memory as a tool for
Yeah.
composing this music, right? So you're presenting some themes, and then you're using them in the development. And to follow what's happening in the development, you kind of have to know what's happening
Right.
before in the
Yeah, it's
uh,
like a character. It's like a character in a novel. You're like, this guy has a
exactly.
name. What happens to this guy when he goes from point A to point B, you know?
Exactly. So that already kind of imposes a sense of temporality, and it engages the listener directly. Like, I'm presenting a character, and then things are going to happen to that character. So you're
Mhm.
supposed to follow along with what's happening. And many times with medieval music, it's just not like that at all, because
Mhm.
there's no or almost no repetition in the sense of melodic, motivic repetition.
Right.
But if you go in a deeper sense, sometimes it's not that you're supposed to think about something that has already happened in that piece. They didn't even have the concept of a piece as we have it today.
Yes, I
Uh,
love that.
but sometimes they would even reference or paraphrase other pieces, other chants. Like the fact that so much of medieval music is based on plain song,
Yeah.
you listen to it in a way that recalls or that presupposes your knowledge of the Gregorian chant that it's based upon, right?
Mhm, mhm,
So
yes.
it's a completely different way of approaching memory and approaching listening and approaching the different levels of interrelationships that you can establish between what you're listening and what you have listened to
In the past,
before.
right, the memory, right, it's not like giving you something totally new in the piece, and then you remember that within the piece, and then that memory, yeah, it's memory of, yeah, right, other things in the culture, other things in the liturgy. Um,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
I mean, that's something I love about early or medieval music in particular. Yeah, the interchangeable parts and this kind of like you said, that not having this idea of a piece, that it's not like a precious, you know, classical music. I mean, one of the things I also love about it is the preciousness of like my vision. This thing is a piece that has my name on it. It's got a theme you've never heard before. I do love that, but it's like, yeah, the medieval thing where it's just like Lego blocks being put together into these modular, you know, things from other things.
yeah, exactly. So of course, I agree completely with you that it's a very attractive thought to believe in this great man theory where you have a figure like Beethoven, and he's just like a sort of creative, bigger than life force that's just revolutionizing music through his original ideas. And that's a very attractive way of listening to it. And you listen to a symphony or a late string quartet by Beethoven, you can feel that.
The late ones are, dude, 131
it's
is
just
forget
unbelievable.
it,
Like how a human being can write a piece of music. But for most of history and in most of the world, that's not how artists have thought about making their art, right? So composers in the Middle Ages, many of whom are completely anonymous, like we have no idea who they were. And this is something that also impacts a lot for us who have this 19th century tradition of thinking in a very precise way about works of art and artists as autonomous. And so all of that already impacts the way that we perceive them. So for example, if you're looking for example, when I make my Spotify playlists that I always base on manuscripts and not on composers or repertories or whatever, you find that if there is an attribution to a piece with a name, you are going to find a recording because it has a name. We know the artist, we know approximately when he or she lived, and then there's our focus, our way of thinking of great men or great women, and making this point in history that I can recognize. I can know, this piece is by Machot, this piece is by Perrotin, this piece is by Hildegard. That already impacts the way that we perceive it. While if a motet in the Montpellier Codex is anonymous, it's like, it's one more motet.
Yeah, right.
And there are motets in the Montpellier Codex which are as precious and as valuable as I don't know, the Messe de Notre Dame, right? But they are not so long, and they are not so recognizable as the Messe de Notre Dame de Machot. And I even think that the Messe de Notre Dame is special in that case because it's always referred as the first mass in history that was conceived as a whole. And in that sense, it goes better with our idea of the complete autonomous piece of art. So we recognize it better. So it's recorded many more times, and it has a more bigger place in music history lessons and in music history books. And of course, it deserves that place, but we must be conscious of the way that we perceive things. I think that's very important. And thinking about pieces. So even when we have a composer, so Viterum Tomnes by Perrotin, one of the most recorded and well-known pieces of medieval music, it's not a piece of music. It's a polyphonic work based on an already composed chant. And the chant appears in the middle. So Viderunt, the first organum part, is only the first two words of the chant, and then it goes back to the chant, and then comes back as a clausula. And that in the time that this was sung, this would have been presented not as a piece of music in a concert or in an album, but as a part of the liturgy, of the Christian liturgy. So in that sense, the way that it would have been perceived is completely different.
Well, I mean,
our understanding of music today.
Yeah, even just the idea of art at all. I mean, just the idea that it's people expressing themselves or something. We take that for granted, even though the 19th century is well behind us. I mean, in any popular sense, it's assumed that the point of art is that someone is expressing their emotions and feelings, which I don't. I mean, I do that all day, so I don't want to like make fun of it, but it's like a narrow, tiny little version of what art could mean, or even art, capital A, like whatever. Like you're saying, I mean, it's part of a liturgy. I mean, you're dealing with worship, you're dealing with creating beautiful things to serve this. I mean, just to serve God, or to serve the worship.
Of course, self-expression can be and often is an element of art and an element of the creative impulse to actually write or create a piece of art. But it's not the only one, right? So sometimes you read articles or analysis about whatever music and then say, because Beethoven in this stage of his life, he was thinking about blah, blah, blah. And in his letters, you can see. But then you look at the music, and sorry, I think he just wrote that because he thought it sounded cool, right?
Yeah. I mean, everything becomes psychologized. You know, everything is just like, you know, you got beaten as a child, so now there's a minor second in the fifth movement. I mean, it's just like that's not.
Yeah, so this interplay. So Hammer Clavier Sonata, the first movement, this interplay between B flat and B natural, it represents the blah blah blah. I don't know. Maybe Beethoven just really wanted to try that out, to try to organizing a whole sonata movement upon this interchange between B flat and B natural, right? So I think maybe today we place a lot of importance on when we receive art as listeners, but also when we analyze it or when we write about art, about music. We center a lot, I think, self-expression and also biographical information.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's always an element, but it's not the only one, and it's probably not even the most important one.
Yeah. I mean, I find it sort of relieving to think about. I mean, so much of my work has been, since it's vocal and it's my own text and it's songs, you know, it's been about me, my life. I mean, really specifically, to a point where I'm just kind of like getting to the second half of this thing. I find it very inspiring and almost relieving to be like, I could just get medieval, not with the sound, but with that, you know, view of art. Like, I mean, I could really empty myself out of this, you know, like more and more, you know. But let's hear. I'm gonna pull the blind down because the light is getting really harsh over here. And then I want to get into talking about your work more specifically.
Sure. I just wanted to say that at the same time, I think the assumption that medieval composers were completely devoid of this element of self-expression, I think it's also as dumb as saying that musicians today are only basing themselves on self-expression. I think it is important to try to recognize to what extent in a time period or in a culture these different creative impulses take place, but they are not the only ones, right?
Yeah, no, true. I mean, yeah, when things have changed a lot in any field, it can be easy to exaggerate or black and white things with the you know, the imagination of the, you know, of the imagine.
So one listens to medieval music, and if it's for example for the liturgy, if it's religious music, one thinks, surely they were writing this piece thinking of God, and they were writing it in the glory of the Lord and blah blah blah. And maybe with medieval music that doesn't happen so much, but with composers like Palestrina, or sometimes even with Bach, people say that, which is really stupid. Even if the composers themselves were saying like, "Oh yes, I write for God," and blah blah blah. I'm sorry, I think maybe Palestrina just wrote a nice melody and was like, wow, this is a really nice melody. And let's see how I can do the counterpoint around it.
Right. Well, I suppose, I mean, in cultures that are so much, a time period that's so much more fundamentally, religion is just baked into things on such a fundamental level. It probably don't have to go around consciously thinking God all day. You could just get into like craft on a more pure level of pure craft, objective materials, you know, and it's like, that is God, is just objective. I mean, just sound, you know, dealing with sound on a, you know, more objective level.
I think for artists, craft is an absolutely important part of what we do, and sometimes you just do something to see if you can, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you see some of these crazy mensural canons like Le Rey au Soleil by Cicogna, or the Missa pro Lazionum by Ockeghem, they were just trying stuff just to see, like like a self-challenge, like, okay, but can I do a canon where one voice is going faster than the other?
Right. It's like a crossword puzzle, some of those things.
exactly, and you see this also in other in other arts. So, for example, I remember reading this text of uh, I don't remember the author's title. He's a medieval Andalusi, so from Al-Andalus poet, and he was saying, I know this very good poet who did an amazing thing. He did two metaphors at the same time. So he was comparing two things to two other things. But I am better because I compared three things to three other things.
Right.
And in that sense, the guy wasn't thinking about self-expression or grammar or whatever. He just wanted to compare three things to three other things, just to see if he could. Right.
Yeah, totally.
So sometimes we do that. At the same time, I recognize maybe I'm biased in that sense when I write, and then so with here this can be our segue into talking about my own music. When I compose, many times I am very focused on listening. So I want to listen to a concrete sound or a concrete harmonic structure or whatever, and I want to go into the sound to like do a zoom in into the sound. So many of the pieces that I write, I just write them because I wanted to listen to them.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make any self-expression, or I'm not trying to create a structure which has X properties or whatever. I just want to listen to that for X amount of time, and then I write it. And luckily enough, I have people who play it, and so then I can listen to it.
Well, you're the first audience member. You know, that's always that's
absolutely and this is something that my teacher Fabian Levy always told me, like, composers are always your first their own first listener. I think that's something it's important to take into account.
For sure. So I mean, before listening, I mean, you described at least in your bio that your music, you labeled it instrumental drone music. Obviously these labels are just labels, but as a starting off point, that is something. And I mean, I can kind of definitely hear how it's drone music. And there's so many different kinds, you know. I mean, you cite doom metal, and drone metal and stuff as an influence alongside composers. You mentioned Phil Niblock, Chelsea for sure, right? I'm totally hearing those. Grisey, I assume, right? You're pretty into Grisey. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Let's listen to a little bit of the piece Rao. And we're going to listen, and we're going to look for those, for the podcast, you'll be listening. And for those who are watching this on YouTube, you can see the score because Pablo's got on his YouTube channel a bunch of score follow-alongs. Cool. Ooh, quarter note equals 60. Fucking keeping it tethered to reality, man. That's where we're all living, is quarter note equals 60.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Let's fire this up on the screen. I'm gonna add this to the stage. Check that out. Last thing, baby. Actually, maybe I'll put that as the entire screen, so then we can look at that. Cool. All right. Should I just play from the beginning? Is that
Yeah, sure.
All right. Yeah. Play maybe like a minute or so. All right, here we go. Rao for ensemble. This is for how many musicians is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's like
that's 10. So eight winds and harp and piano.
Okay, awesome. Here we go. Yeah, man, this is gnarly, dude. This is not polite. This is not polite music, man. Yes, I love that. Let's all right, let's go back to the view here with both of us. So yeah, man, sound, time, there's many things we could talk about here. What was like the first thing, when writing this? Did this come like with concept ahead of time, or was it more like a commission for just like write for this ensemble or?
So the story of how I wrote this piece is I was participating in a workshop with Ensemble Intercontemporain in Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's legend. That's yeah. If y'all don't know, yeah, Ensemble Intercontemporain is like one of the legends.
Yeah, ensemble based in Paris, works with ERCAM a lot. It was founded by Pierre Boulez. And this was a workshop that they were doing. So the instrumentation was already given, right? They selected 8 composers to write for them, and that was already given. And also we had to use all of the instruments, which of course it's always a thing, right? For me, I like to work a lot with sounds that are drawn out a lot in time, and then suddenly I see I have to write for an ensemble that has tuba, for example, and harp. Right. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to think about how to approach this. But the main creative impulse, and here we go back to what I was saying about how there can be very different ways to approach why an artist writes a piece of music or creates a piece of art. And for this one, the main idea was to work on texture, on musical texture, not understanding that as even like in ligeti, you might think of micropolyphony as a kind of texture, but really thinking it as something tactile, right? So the title of the piece, Rau, means rough in German. And also I like it because it already has this Rau, this,
this kind of... Sorry, you could notate that. You got trill, or not trills, that'd be flutter tongue more like, but yeah.
Exactly. So I'm at the beginning, especially, I'm working with a lot of ways of playing. You call them extended techniques. This is a concept that I don't like the same way that I don't like early music. I don't.
Yeah. They're not extended anymore. You're expected to be able to do them now. So they were extended like 100 years ago. Yeah.
But let's say non-traditional playing techniques that give a kind of texture to the sound. So flutter tone is one of them, of course. And then there are also some ones which are even in the realm of contemporary music, not so usual. So, for example, the trumpet and the trombone have to play with a CD on the bell of the instrument. So they have to hold a CD against the bell.
A CD, like a compact disc, you're saying?
A compact disc, yeah, okay. Exactly. So when they play, as they're holding the CD against the bell, the CD rattles because the air is coming out. It puts it into movement, that it rattles, and that's why you hear it so like a zzz kind of sound. That's the CD on the trumpet and the trombone. And then some instruments like the bass clarinet or the bassoon, they can, or the oboe also is very good for that. They can do a type of multiphonic in which you're not actually producing like several different frequencies. I mean, you are making several different frequencies, but the frequencies are so close together that they don't sound like a typical multiphonic, but they sound like a one single tone with a lot of beats, right?
Okay.
So
yeah,
it will go like, so it's like a more intense way of producing a flutter tone kind of sound.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I was exploring all these different ways of texturizing a sound, because in the end the piece is D note, the note D, just stretched throughout
Yeah.
8 minutes
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it.
yeah. Right. So that's that would be where the word drone might apply as far as one thing I noticed though, it's like actually just on a technical level, looking at the score,
Mm.
even though there are these things you might call extended techniques or whatever. It seems something that I'm impressed by is just it's not the notation. It's not any more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, it's like which is that there's nothing. It's like as clear to read as it possibly could be. Like this doesn't look like well, everything is hard to play well, but this does not look like a headache of a
Yeah.
and I mean that in a good way. Composers, like especially modern music, there's this thing where you want you're like trying to reach for these things, and so you get like lost in the sauce with the notation and telling people this is lean. This is very lean notation. It's like so yeah.
Yeah, there's in the last 100 years, maybe not 100, but in the last 75 years, there has been a quite strong emphasis on notation, so on writing the music. And I think, in a sense, this has a bit to do with the fact that composers today are mostly in the contemporary music scene. So probably. So the composers that you think of, like Boulez, Xenakis, Stockhausen, etc., they are not really composer performers. They just write down the music, and that's played. So, on one sense, and of course, there are many composers that don't go into this stereotype that I'm painting right now, but there is a tendency towards this. And in that tendency, sometimes you find some people, and I won't name any names, but you find sometimes people who are less composers of music and more writers of scores, right? I have this feeling a bit, and many times you even see that with young composers, maybe composers who are not so experienced, where they are so enthralled in just making the score. They want to make it extremely beautiful, to play a lot with notation, and in a sense, music becomes almost secondary to, or not even music, but the fact of reading that score, reading that notation becomes secondary, or it even becomes the sole subject. So in the music of composers like Brian Ferneyhough, of course, there's a lot of stuff there also musically, but the act of deciphering the text itself is already part of the performance, right?
It's a psychological it's a psychological trial to read some of that music. I mean, not that I've attempted to do it, but I've looked at those scores, I mean, they're super cool. They do look like, I mean, Ferneyhough's music does sound cool, but it sounds to me like crazy free jazz. I mean, it sounds like crazy free improvised music.
And if you go to someone like Finney, it's even more like that. I actually don't like Ferneyhough a lot. I don't like listening to Ferneyhough a lot. But Finney, which is kind of like in the same aesthetic way, I like him a lot. And it's what you say. It's almost not so different if you just listen to it. It's not so different from hearing a crazy
just Cecil Taylor or something, but some of those scores, I look at it and I'm like, I appreciate this, but it seems like an artifact of like sort of a sick culture. You're like, we're not looking at health. When you see some of these scores, we're looking at like some kind of collective like mental illness or something.
In a sense, it's just a different way of mannerism, right? So it's not so different from things that have happened in the past. So just like tendencies that are taken to their last extremes, like really the point where you cannot go any further in that way. And you have had things like that many times in history. So like in last Renaissance, you find people like Thomas Tallis doing pieces for 40 voices, and it's a canon, and it's so you find things like that. And even in medieval music, the
Ars Superior,
it's exactly like that. And I think it's very interesting that when you get something like that, the focus on notation itself becomes much stronger, right? So in art subtilior, many times they are doing crazy rhythms. In the sense that I was talking about before, just like making a crazy rhythm just to see if I can
Yeah.
do it, right? But they are also making graphic scores, so it's very famous, the example of the heart-shaped score, stuff like that, which is very similar aesthetically to George Crumb, for example, when he's making a piece in the shape of a spiral or in the shape of an eye or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So I think there's this tendency, and I don't belong to this tendency.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the score itself, to the point that sometimes you look at scores of mine and you're like, what is this, right?
Right.
I don't know if it would be interesting to pull up, but in the score of Suspension, which I believe you have, that I sent to you, it's for 4 guitars.
Ooh.
And the first page is just literally one note in each guitar played at the same time, and then the rest is bars of silence.
Right.
And so what's happening in that piece, which we cannot listening to right now because it's not online yet, but like and subscribe to I will
Absolutely. Yeah.
I will upload it shortly, probably in the next few weeks. What's happening in that piece, it's written for classical guitar, right? It's not electric guitar, but each guitar has one microphone, and every time they play a note, it's recorded. The resonance of the chord of the note that they're playing is recorded, and it's frozen in time so that it lasts virtually forever.
It's looped. The sample is looped live. Is that the idea? Or?
Not even. It's the recording is analyzed through a FFT, through a fast Fourier transform, and then it's electronically frozen. So it's not even loop. It's just like literally the sound of the resonance of the note that they just played is frozen in time. It's really cool. I really like that piece. And as I said, I will upload it.
Wait, how do you mean frozen in time? It's not repeating, but it's
basically how it works is they do. So the computer makes an analysis of a spectral analysis
right
of the sound, and then it just reproduces the results of that analysis as a sound, so not as a sample.
Okay, but how does it last? How does that sound? Yeah, how does that wait? So did that sound audibly lasts as a drone or no?
Yeah. It's completely maintained. So okay, so let's see how I can explain it. So think of a low trombone sound. You can analyze the spectrum of that
overtones and stuff.
sound,
Yeah,
the overtone spectrum, and you get the octave, the fifth, the third, etc., etc., etc. If a computer takes a record of exactly what frequencies are sounding at what intensity, it can reproduce that sound as if it were synthesized, kind of.
okay,
right? So you don't really have to think about it as a recording that is being maintained, but you have to think about it as a resynthesis of what the computer has just heard.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I understand this conceptually now. The sound of it, I can't actually exactly imagine, but
it's complicated to explain the process by which you freeze a sound. But I mean, think of you play guitar, right?
Yeah.
Think of a freeze pedal. That's exactly what.
Okay. Like. I've never used one, but okay. All right. Okay.
Okay, but you know kind of how they work. Basically, you play a note, and the resonance lasts forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did you get the score of?
Okay. Here, I'll pull that up here. Let's see.
Because you were saying that in the piece that we just heard, that the notation was very clear and that there was nothing else than what has to be there. This is the extreme of
Yes, yes, yes.
suspension is the
Okay.
extreme of
Okay,
that
here's suspension. I'm gonna
tendency.
right, I'm gonna download this and I'm gonna open it up, and then I'm going to share it with the thing. Here, let's see. Is that up on the screen now? If I do that, here we go. Okay. Yeah. So
so go to page like 4, I think it's where the page 7. There you go. That's the first page of the score, and as you see, there's almost nothing. Right? It looks like it's just silence, because what the guitarists have to do is just play the right harmonic at the right moment, and then the soundscape is completely made electronically, so you don't really have to write anything else down, right?
Yeah.
But even the dynamics, in this sense, I just ask to play not too loud, not too soft, so just enough so that the microphone picks it up, and then the rest is done by the computer. And in that sense, bringing it back to ideas of medieval music and stuff like that, in that sense, it's kind of a medieval approach to music notation, right? You just write down which notes are to be sung and at what point. So the rhythm of the of those notes, and that's everything that you need to write. You don't need crescendo, you don't need fortissimo, you don't need staccato, you don't need anything. Not even a tempo indication. I just write quarter note 60, but it could be played also slower. It could be played faster.
Okay.
In the end, and that's also something that I believe is an influence of getting to know medieval music. The idea of really bringing notation down to the bare minimum. Is through a performance practice making it work.
Yeah, would you say for this piece of Rao, does that, because that is written, there isn't anything loose there time-wise, right? You have that written, the whole thing is written over a pulse, right? And so this is, see, sometimes I explain stuff to people who are listening, technical stuff. Sometimes we just breeze over it and let people, immersion technique. But just to give people a sense, that score was written with quarter note equals 60. So you're hearing just these drone textures that are coming and going and fluidly happening. You're not hearing any beat, but the whole thing is conceived and counted against. Is that 60? You can tell me as a conductor. No, it's probably faster than 60. But
it's a bit slower than 60.
Okay, right. Yeah. But yeah. So, and I was joking that it's like to have quarter note equals 60. That's just time. That's just seconds on a clock, because if the beat is not apparent, if that pulse is not apparent in the aesthetics, we may as well just have it be that. So yeah, does that the thing of having that stuff be written against a pulse, is that something you'd actually rather almost not do, but you just had to do it in that case because it's a large ensemble and they all have to be locked into a grid just to get it done?
No.
You know what I mean?
I'm very, very specific about timing, because I think so I was talking before that for me composing is mainly about listening. It's like an almost hedonistic way of thinking about music, where it's just in the same way that eating food, it's about the pleasure of tasting. For me, listening to music is about the pleasure of listening. And the thing is that listening always happens in a very strict time frame, right? Sounds have durations. Even if you take like the John Cage approach to listening, where he says traffic is almost as good music as Beethoven. If you listen to Traffic, things are happening in time, right? Listening it's not the same as watching a painting, where you just can in one instant you can see the whole thing.
Yeah.
And also then of course you can decide to focus on one thing or the other. But that's not so. Time when you're enjoying a painting is not part of the. It's not an element of the painting itself. Even if you're reading a book, the time of the story has nothing to do with the time frame in which you're reading about it.
Right.
So in 15 minutes, you can read a story that happens through 15 years, or you can take 2 months to read a story that happens in one day, right? So even though when you're telling a story, the time of the story is also part of the work itself. It's not really it's not connected to the experience of that time. But in music, it's completely one-to-one. Like what's happening, even if you listening to it live or if you're listening to a recording, I mean, you can pause a recording or you can listen it at 1.5 speed. But I think most people don't don't do that. The time at which you're experiencing has been decided.
Absolutely.
Even if it has not been decided by the composer because it's an aleatoric piece or whatever, it's being decided live by the performer.
Sure.
If you're listening to a piece of music which is being improvised, so it's not written down, it's still being decided by the person performing.
Yep, no doubt.
So in that sense, I'm very, very strict about timing. And so in many of my pieces, but of course also in this Rao one, the exact time at which events happen or the point at which notes begin or end is it's very, very carefully decided even before I write down the actual note.
Because I mean, it sounds that way. I was just wondering, if you had a different relationship to the how specific you were being with it, just given what we were saying about the other piece. But yeah, I it's different. Also calling your music drone music, it is absolutely dealing with a drone in the sense of that it's focusing around one pitch and then this sort of the harmonic stuff coming off of that one pitch. I think when a lot of people, at least outside of classical music, people who are more coming from like a metal thing or whatever, a lot of people always think of I don't know if you're just really into like Sun or something like that. Like it's so much more. People really love this sort of spacing out kind of attention where like really far, not a lot is happening and you're listening to one sound. Whereas like I haven't gone through your whole catalog and stuff, but just the pieces that I've checked out, there is quite a lot happening as far as like, it's obviously, it's not like narrative, but it's like, the attention that it's asking is not like, it's the piece is taking you places. It's not like, oh, I'm going to get bored and then I'm going to go past the boredom into a transcendent thing where I'm post bored and all these things are happening in my mind. It is largely like, there's an activity to it.
In that sense, probably Rao is one of the least representative pieces by me that go in that direction. But maybe we could listen to a bit of Beasts.
Okay.
Let's listen maybe to the first minute and a half, and then you'll see how I deal with drones when I'm really going into that way of listening.
Okay. Let's bring up Beasts here for double bass. This is for double bass quintet, huh? Okay, sick.
Yeah.
And we'll share this tab instead. All right. Boom. Okay, you can see my my plebeian and let's see YouTube suggestions. Let me see here. I gotta like do this at that should do it for the good. Okay, cool. We'll just play this and follow along a little bit. Yeah, quite a bit more static. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is more like you live in the sound a little bit more. Well, no, but we're always living in the sound, of course. But yeah, I stopped it way before we would get the effect of what actually living in that piece would be. But yeah, that's for 5 double basses, huh? You said quintet?
Yeah. That was written for a double bass ensemble in Mexico.
Mhm.
Mushamucas, they are called. And of course, if you're dealing with sound, with overtones, with stretched sounds, with drones, what else than a double bass quintet, right?
Yeah.
To explore all that stuff. So, for example, what's happening in this piece is that they are playing double stops. So with the on the lowest string of the double bass, of a 4-string double bass, they are playing an A, which is a unison with the third open string, right?
Yeah.
And from there, with just moving a bit the finger with which they're playing the 4th string, they are detuning this unison to create acoustical beats, right?
Yep. You can see that in the
And
score.
in
Very, very clear. Yeah.
and in that sense, you get an emerging texture, right, on which the beats coming from the different double basses come at you at different speeds. And in a performance with an audience, the 5 double basses should be completely surrounding the audience,
I was gonna
right?
ask. It had to be, right. Yeah.
So yeah, so you have uh, 3 beats a second coming from there, so it's like whoa 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 whoa, and then from here it goes like whoa 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 whoa.
This was, I was going to notice that because I didn't like this. I've never really seen something like this where you have actually notated on the actual score, like what the result, I can't zoom in on that, but yeah, like it says, BPS, like beats per second, right? So you're like,
Yeah.
you're showing how, given this is mostly for people listening to this in podcast form, you got these drones, right? Where, you're like, these things are microtonally shifting. The interference of the two tones are making these wah, 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 wah sounds, right? And so, you've actually got notated at what point it's going to be making a 10 beats per second thing versus a 12 beats per second thing. This
Exactly.
is like, I mean, this is like, I studied a little bit with Alvin Lucier at Wesley. And so, I mean, he's like,
amazing.
He's like all about that, but this is taking it to this rigorous, he was like exploring that phenomenon, but this is like, you're like, okay, we're going to work with that phenomenon. You're actually notating the speeds that the things are vibrating at. Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah, and what was I going to say? I forgot, so it was probably not so important.
Sorry, maybe
yes, that because you said that this is the first time that I've seen the exact beats per second written down. This is something that's already in some pieces by Xenakis. So, for example, Xenakis has this crazy piece for 10 winds. So similar instrumentation to my Rao piece, where he notates like exactly I want between the clarinet and the bassoon. I want the bassoon to the tune to the point that you get exactly 5 beats per second. And then Grisey also does that, for example, in the in Solo pour deux, he also does, that's where he writes exactly. And in most of these cases, it's kind of approximate because the bassoon can change the intonation with the reed to a certain extent, but you cannot really control perfectly well that you are going to get like that the fluctuation of the intonation is going to be exactly to the point where you get 5 beats per second. But in a double bass, it's actually pretty easy. First of all, because one of the strings is an open string, so it's not going to change in intonation.
Right, got that reference point, yeah.
Exactly, and it's so low that if you want to get 6 beats per second, you know that's like a semitone and a half. And in a double bass, a semitone and a half is like this distance, right? so
yeah.
so you can move the finger enough so that
Yeah.
you are very, very precisely finding
Mhm.
the point at which you're getting.
Mhm.
So in
Yeah.
the I'm not saying that it's easy to play this piece, but it's really possible to clearly define
Yeah.
how fast the
Yeah.
interference is beating.
Yeah. It really shows you too how like people I don't know, like there's this kind of when you're like beginning composition or something, there's this thing of like there's rhythm and then there's harmony, or there's rhythm and then there's with this kind of thing, you see how timbre is rhythm. I mean, these are like actually, you're dealing with like periodic, periodicity, uh, as yeah. I'm interested. Also, you said in a brief description of some of your stuff, you said that you're dealing with like drones, texture, and stretched melodies. I'm interested in kind of like what's the melodic uh
Hmm.
aspect, because when people think of melody, obviously they think of certain simple things. Even if you're more into more out there stuff or whatever, there still is a sense that melody means a sequence of pitches that is conceived of horizontally in time. Yeah, what's the sort of how does melody, or like a concept of melody, stretched or not, play into this sort of more drone sounding music?
So in one sense, and also to tie it again back to medieval music influence, um, if you think of melismatic organum, what they're doing there, the drone part of that organum, is basically a stretched melody in itself, but it's so stretched out that you don't even listen to it as a
Yeah.
melody
You mean
anymore.
just the cantus firmus, this beneath?
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if I'm singing an F for 2 minutes and then I change to an E for 1.5 minutes and then I sing a G for 45 seconds, technically it's a melody, and it is actually a stretching out of a Gregorian melody, but to some extent you don't listen to it anymore as a melody. So I could take the Cope answer and say like, oh yeah, my drones are exactly that, right? I use very, very long notes and you can understand that as a melody. But actually I don't think of it really that way. I think of it as, for example, overtone melodies. I have these couple of pieces for piano in which I use a vibration motor to put the string into vibration, and that produces crazy overtones. I think actually one of those pieces is already online, so we could take a look
Okay.
at it.
Vibration motor. It's essentially like an EBow, right, on a guitar. Like it's just a little thing that magnetically makes the string vibrate. Is that the
Not
idea?
magnetically.
No.
Think more of like a sex toy.
Oh, it literally just vibrates it. Okay.
Like literally a vibrator, so a vibration motor that is so it's not electromagnetic. That would be the EBow. But
Okay.
for example, if you try
Yeah.
an EBow on the very low notes of a piano, it's not going to work at all.
EBows
But
suck in
so
general. I never got into them really. But what yeah, wait, what's the
it
name of
depends.
this
It
piece?
depends on what. So this one is Bad Chicks for bassoon, piano, and cello.
All right, got it. Here we go.
And I'm going to have to give you a concrete timestamp to
Oh yeah.
so that you see what I mean exactly. Because there's a point like a cadenza. Go to 740.
Okay, 740.
Like a vibrator cadenza where it's just
Okay.
this sound on one of the lowest strings on the piano,
Okay.
and the harmonics that you get overhead kind of create this idea of melody. So in that sense, it's almost like a X number of parts organum.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
which the moving voices are the harmonics of the lower one.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. I'll take it to 735 so that
Yeah,
then
sure.
when I take the arrow away, it will show the actual you'll be able to see the whole thing that we want to be looking at. Wait, oops. Here we go. Let's see here. Is this not that should be shown? Yeah. No, here we go. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
That was it. Okay. So the high, like the really high ringing, is that what we're talking about with that? That was the melody
Yeah.
that made the sequence of, I'm not going to sing the thing, but right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Cool.
And by the way, that's completely acoustic, right? So
Yeah.
that's exactly what you would have heard live. There's no kind of electronics or anything, no amplification. That's
Mm-hmm.
literally the sound that you get from the piano. Then I did another piece for piano solo and electronics where I also use this sound. But yeah, that's when I think of melody in my music, that's my main approach. But if you go to also in my channel, the video before, it's called Boanerges for tenor saxophone, bass clarinet, percussion, and piano. In that one, we can actually hear something that really resembles what anyone would understand as a melody.
But when they're just, where do we, yeah, where do we start there?
Let's go to a timestamp, for example.
This piece is for tenor saxophone, bass clarinet, percussion, and piano. Nice. Starting out with some slap tongue, huh? Nice.
Where's this? Yeah, let's go to like 340.
340. Okay.
So we can hear a bit of the drone and then the main melody for this piece.
Okay, cool. Bring this up here. Mm-hmm. All right, here. I'm gonna cool, I'll play this right here. Yeah. Okay.
So that's a kind of more traditional, we could say, way of thinking of melody, which doesn't appear so much in my music, but I also sometimes use it. And in that piece, the low drones that the piano is playing, which is using a different technique to get like a virtually unending sound, but on the piano. The drones are inversion that lasts the whole piece for the three first notes of that melody. So the da da da. The piano plays like do, do, do,
okay, right, like backwards, yeah.
For the whole piece, so it's like also like a sort of cantus firmus.
Okay, right on, yeah. Yeah, that was awesome. Okay, yeah, because this is exactly what I didn't predict what you're going to say, but I was like, I figured there was something, the melodic element. I figured there was something more embedded than simply like drones. A melody slowed down to the point that it's drones. Yeah, I mean, this overtone thing, it's really like, taking the vertical and getting horizontal vibes out of the vertical, it's like there's, overtones is like the most sort of like vertically minded thing is overtones, but yeah. Cool, man. Well, let's see. Maybe we can just get into talking about things. I mean, well, we've been checking out your work. Are there projects you have coming up soon? As we kind of wind down. I mean, anything just on a promotional level that you'd like people to look out for? I mean, do you do stuff in the States at all, or?
No, I've never even been to the States, so probably nothing coming up over there anytime soon. Right now, I'm working on a piece which is going to be quite quite a thing. I bet it's 5 arrangements of pieces of medieval music.
Oh yeah.
So here it's not like an original composition in that sense. And there we could go again into the into our discussion before of taking materials from other people and how that works, and the idea of an autonomous piece of art. But in any case, these are arrangements, so not an original piece of music. And it's for an ensemble in Austria called Die Randzone, who is made up of an electric violin, electric guitar, accordion, and drums. Right, so it's going to be very, very interesting. And it's kind of like we were talking before, right at the beginning, about taking something medieval and bringing it into the realm of the modern through something so stupid as a meme. I think taking a medieval piece and arranging it for electric violin, electric guitar, drums, and accordion, it's just like completely taking it out of the sound world and trying to find something essential to that music through taking out everything else, right?
Yeah. I'm sure you're going to do something great with that. It could, in the wrong hands, that could go very wrong. But I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's very challenging because there are some other composers who have done some, like contemporary composers who have done something like this. I don't
like the Sciarrino arrangements of the Gesualdo. Madrigal.
Kind
of
like
that stuff is
the
crushing.
Sciarrino is amazing. But for example, I think it's is it Carola Baukholt who did the Dufay Bearbeitungen, or Isabel Mundry. Sorry. Yeah. So Isabel Mundry did 3 arrangements of Dufay, and she takes it in a completely different direction as Sciarrino, for example. But and they are good pieces of music, but they don't really do it for me, right?
Okay.
It's very difficult to take something which is so foreign and bringing it into the realm of, in this case, contemporary music. So I think her arrangements are for like a big contemporary ensemble, so strings, winds, percussion, piano, etc. And it's risky. You most of the time you're not going to get the. I don't want to criticize in one way or the other, but it's a risky endeavor to take something like medieval music and arrange it for a completely different ensemble. But it's a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to that. We don't have a premiere date yet, but it will be at some point maybe in this year.
Okay, so, cool. Well, maybe I don't know. Yeah, you can maybe let me know when there is a premiere, even if I'm not around. It'd just be cool to know about. Who knows? Because I do go to Europe. I mean, fair amount. They're in Vienna. You said the ensemble
in Graz.
Yeah. In Graz. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, Pablo, thank you so much for coming on the stream, man. This was tremendously great for me.
Thank you for having me.
I think people. My only little minor apology is that I set the stream on private, which doesn't mean that it will be private. I accidentally. It just means that there were no comments. That's all. But people were watching this, and it just means that we didn't get the joy of people commenting on the side. But that's not a huge thing. This will be. I'm sure this will be a hit on the channel. So, all right, man. Let's. I don't know. Let's be in touch about anything and everything.
Absolutely, yeah. You know where to find me. I'm at mimival.music on Instagram, and then my YouTube channel is just my name, so Pablo Andoni Olabarría. You can find me there. And yeah, so one of the other things that I'm going to do in the next weeks is end the YouTube videos with the scores of pieces of mine. So if you liked what you listen to right now, you can look forward to those. Some of the pieces that I'm going to upload next are, I think, some of my best works. So a 15-minute piece for violin and electronics, which deals entirely with just natural harmonics. Yeah. A solo piano piece, which is just using this vibrator sound that we listened to before, things like that. I think it's it's pretty interesting if you liked what you hear. So
yeah, everybody check that out. I mean, it's just such a great thing to do as a composer to have. I mean, as a composer of notated complex music, to have these score follow alongs on YouTube. It's just, I mean, it's such a resource, man. I wish I had that when I was a kid. I mean, you just learn, because just looking at a score, it's like, I mean, even the first time I looked at just like a Debussy score, I mean, just orchestration, you're like, oh, okay. It's just the veil is lifted. Like immediately you're just like, yeah.
I think we really don't appreciate, like some last thoughts, we really don't appreciate how absolutely lucky we are today to have things like IMSLP or DIAM, like the Digital Image Archiver of Medieval Music, where from the comfort of my home, having a coffee, I can just log on and see dozens upon dozens of medieval music manuscripts, look at how it was notated, like just the quantity and the quality of resources we have available to us today, like score videos on YouTube. That's amazing, and that would have been not even possible just 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just I think those kind of resources are amazing, and I would invite anyone who is interested in medieval music or contemporary music, for that matter, to learn about them, to check them out, to find just other composers like me that are just there uploading their stuff on YouTube for everyone to see. I think we're very lucky to have all of that. And
yeah, for sure, man, for sure. All right. Have a wonderful day, Pablo, and I'll talk to you before long, I'm sure. Thanks for coming by, man.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Peace.
Bye.